And guess what? There he is. Hit the button and Michael Parkhurst pops up because, once again, Cap, I'm trying to sit here and navigate things and hit the button for the open. What happens? I missed the button for the open. I just transferred Jared out. He knocked himself out. So I hit the next button, which meant that you popped up immediately instead of giving you the grand open that we always give you and Greg when you show up for the Friday free kick.
Hey, it's all good, John. Yeah. You weren't expecting me, so I threw you off again. So
Absolutely. I was not. But it's always great to have you and Greg here for the Friday free kick. I want to kind of talk about a bunch of different things within the context of mentoring and experiences and things like that. And, obviously folks are talking about what information was released yesterday by The Athletic, but I don't necessarily want to get into that particular kind of a discussion about the individual because, once again, it's one side of an issue. Atlanta United has not come out publicly to say anything, but I want to look at it this way. I want to address it this way with you as a mentor and a former player in Major League Soccer. When you have a difficult situation with a player who means as much as Joseph does, when you're the surrounding part of the roster, and this applies to mentors and mentees as well, as you are looking at a roster of individuals that you're trying to help, and that one person that might be better than the others may not be around that much longer. When you look at your mentees and they understand that there's one guy who's better and they're okay and they're trying to learn, what does all of the noise that's associated with anything, how does noise affect mentees, and how do you address the idea of noise and making sure that it doesn't affect them working on the task at hand, I guess is the way that I'll phrase the question.
And you mean by noise, meaning like things going on out off the field? And
off the field, all of the chatter that you might hear about your play or your team's play, those kinds of things. Off the field chatter, how do you address with your mentees the notion of focusing on the task at hand and just being the best that you can, even though there's all of this noise around you, whatever that noise is?
Yeah, it's not easy. I'm not going to say, hey, do this and it's easy, right? I mean, I read this morning about Klay Thompson. I don't know if you saw it, John, but he was talking about how he heard Charles Barkley was not criticizing, but saying that he's not the same player he was pre-injury.
Right.
And, Klay said something to the effect of like, I'm not yet, but give me a break. I'm going to get there. And you could just tell, like, he obviously, it affected him, what Charles said. Right. And so even Klay Thompson, who's one of the best basketball players in the world, he's being affected by, a commentator's viewpoint of things. Right. And so it's not always easy to just shut everything out. So that's first thing of knowing, like, okay, all athletes are human beings. They hear things, they read things, and it does affect them sometimes. But I think that no one on the outside completely understands what you as an athlete are going through every day, day in and day out, in your preparation and how hard you're working and the commitment to the craft that you have. And if you can look at yourself in the mirror and say you're doing everything that you can to be successful on the field and give yourself the best opportunity in your team, then you just have to, live with that and know that the performances will come if they're not there. And even if the performance isn't there from the rest of your team and there's issues and things like that, then it gets back to the controllables and uncontrollables and what you can control and what you can't, and focusing on your own performances and how you can help the team.
Okay. One of our watchers and listeners in the Twitch pitch, Kefsi, has a question for you this morning. You've described just how hard it is to move when you don't want to. Can you talk about how narrow the margins are As an example, do front offices offer a range of options? Is it take it or leave it? Or we made the decision, you have no say? In your experience, I imagine with you and those around you, it's been pretty much choice D, all the above, that you've seen versions of all of that. But when it comes to what Kefsi's talking about here, what have your experiences been?
Yeah, it depends on the player and it depends on the organization. I think that some players are, I'll just say, more respected by their organizations, and some organizations do things how I would view as the right way, or the way that you'd want them to be done to you, right? If you were on the other end of it, right? I think that Julian Gressel is a good example of, like, the trade had already occurred and they brought him in and, right before training, I was like, hey, we just traded you to the other side of not even the country, because it's out of the country. But hey, you're going to the other side, West Coast there, and going to go play for Vancouver. And it was, completely blindsided and didn't know it was occurring. No talk from the agent, no talk to the player, that for me is a terrible look, especially to a guy who's not in their first few years, who's one of the better players in the league. When I was moving on from Columbus, and I didn't see eye to eye with Greg about my value, and I was upset and disappointed by that for sure. And it hurt our relationship. But, he was very good about, like, being upfront with me and with my agent and saying, hey, we'll try and move you somewhere where you'd want to go. Obviously to a certain extent, he didn't want to make a powerhouse in the East too good. So I had some say there. And it goes to the other side too, right? Usually the team that's trading for players, sometimes they want to know if the player wants to come, because sometimes you don't want to get a player who doesn't want to go where you are at, right? Some teams obviously don't care. They're saying, hey, they'll deal with it and they'll get over it. But unfortunately there's no set way, right? The MLS controls all the options. There are no player options in MLS. Maybe Beckham had one and those types of players, but 99.9% of players do not have a player option. So all options are the league and the team options. And very few players have those no trade clauses like Joseph has. So Joseph will have a say because of that.
When you're talking to your mentees, how many times does your conversation roll into the idea of the world isn't fair?
A lot. It's something I tell my kids all the time, because I think it's important to understand that, right? You can do things the right way and prepare the right way and do things this and even studying for a test, right? You study all night, you put the time in and you don't do well. And then the other kid who, like, goofs off all day, right? Doesn't pay attention and stuff. And somehow he does well on the test. And you think, hey, that's just the way it falls sometimes, right? Life isn't fair, right? You can dominate a game on the soccer field and lose 1-0 on a corner kick or an own goal or whatever, right? It's just, life isn't fair. And it's just the understanding of, like, accepting that and moving on and not, dwelling on it, because you will come across things that for some reason it goes down that way. And it's all about, like, viewing it of, like, okay, well, it was meant to be for some reason, right? Whatever reason that is, I don't know, maybe quite yet, but I'm going to deal with it and I'm going to move on. And I'm not going to make this, like, this isn't the way that it will always be, right? This was an outlier, an outcast, but these things do happen.
What about the notion of being as stand up an individual as possible, being a professional? Because it's not just how you are as an athlete, because even if you don't turn into that top 1/100th of 1% and be a professional athlete, you're still going to be out there in the real world, and how you conduct yourself as an individual growing up is hopefully the individual that you will continue to be as you get into an adult. You have to have those conversations too, I would imagine. It's how you present yourself and how you start your ideas is hopefully how you carry yourself on future. True?
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. A lot of the mentoring we do is, it doesn't matter if they're going to be a professional soccer player, if they're going to go work in business or be a contractor or whatever, do anything in life. there's a certain way to carry yourself and to look about things and to set yourself up for the most success possible. When I think about why a lot of companies like to hire ex-athletes, I think that one of the reasons is athletes deal with a ton of failure, right? More than the average person deals with failure, right? If you look at soccer players, right? Say on a good season, you lose 30 to 40% of your games, right? So 30 to 40% of the time you're failing, right? If John, if you failed 30 to 40% of the times in your jobs, right, you wouldn't have the job very much, right? You wouldn't have it very long.
Right.
And so athletes they need to have a good ability to get over losses and to move on and to learn from them, and to have that courage to do that, that some non-athletes have never don't as often go through.
How long did it take you to, I don't want to use the word accept losing, because no one likes to accept the notion of losing, but I guess to understand that you won't win 100% of the time, whatever you're doing, whether it's athletically or in the business world or whatever. How long did it take you to understand that it's not going to be 100% of the time that you're going to be successful?
Yeah, I think I came into a good locker room in New England with when I got drafted, and a lot of veterans. And I think at the time, I was at Wake Forest in college, and I mean, I played there 3 years, and we were very, very successful. So we didn't lose much. When I came pro, sometimes after losses, I'd be pretty disappointed and pretty hard. And you see other guys kind of disappointed, yeah, but bouncing back very quickly, and still going home to their kids and going out afterwards to have dinner and things. And so they kind of taught me of like the benefit of, okay, what's in the past is in the past. Yes, we can learn from it, but it's not going to help us for next game if we're dwelling on this loss in the past. And it's just the life of athletics, right? And taking the positives away from it and taking the lessons away from it will help you in the future. But losing is part of the journey for sure.
So when you lose or you don't get your way, I guess what you want to have happen, I guess it can be losing, or it can be just not yet. I think there's probably two ways to describe it. When you look at that idea, when it comes to discussing that with other folks, I mean, we're all wired differently, I think, when it comes to our challenges. How do you get all of these different mindsets of levels of acceptance together to work as a unit? And I know that that's like a team concept kind of a thing, but when you have folks who are kind of more chill and more mellow, and they understand, okay, yeah, we're not going to happen, it's not going to happen 100% of the time. And then you have those guys like you that are just like, it's got to happen 100% of the time, at least when you're starting out. How difficult is it to manage all of those ideas in one space before everyone understands a common goal?
Yeah, it's challenging, and that's the beauty of a team, right? We had it in Atlanta when I was there for sure. Guys like myself and Jeff were a little bit more even keeled and understanding of the process, but you've got the younger guys, especially the Latino guys. Take Leandro, for example. He was definitely somebody where it was like, the highs and lows, and like after every game of like being super upset and disappointed and frustrated. And that's part of learning and growing. And that's, you hope that, through some conversations, we can help him, understand some things, and he'll just grasp some stuff off being around us. But also, I think that it keeps us, Jeff and I, when I say us, young and hungry, and, brings us back to that time. And, so I think there's good things to both sides. But, I definitely tend to lean towards understanding the long game, especially in a long season, unless things are going, down, 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 down. Then you have to hit a point where this is no longer acceptable.
I was gonna say, because I would imagine that while you and Big Red were probably two of the more even keeled guys out there was always time where you could sit there and have a moment where you could be a little more than even keel. But I think that the experience factor is where you sit there and you manage. It's like, okay, I need to ramp it up just a little bit. I need to be a little bit more fiery, or even conversely, I need to be even a little less dialed in than I am right now. It's just, I think experience also is part of managing those moments too, where you kind of read the room and you're like, okay, I need to dial it up here a little bit just so everybody understands that this is that much more of a moment instead of just being as even keeled as you and Jeff are.
Definitely. And, I'm only saying, being even keeled and understanding of losing when yourself and everyone on the team has given everything that they've got and prepared the right way and brought the right mentality and the right work rate and all that stuff. Right. And then you still lose.
Yeah.
Right. But sometimes all that doesn't line up. Right. And your team is not playing up to expectations for whatever reason or another. And those are the times when you go, from the even keel above that to say, hey, this isn't good enough. Why are we like this? Let's get out of it, get better. This needs to improve, versus like, oh, it's no problem.
When you have those moments where you've got to grab somebody by the scruff of the neck and kind of sit there and shake them, it's like, what's that like for someone like you as that individual to sit there and have to dial it up that much more and have everybody understand, or that one individual understand, dude, you've got to really jack it up here, and I'm going to be the example here as well. What's it like to have to take control by the scruff of the neck and drag folks into a situation that they may not quite understand off the top? This is a big deal.
Yeah, I think that was one of the big benefits for me as far as my demeanor, because I rarely did that. So when I did do it, like, everyone knew, oh shoot, if Parky's losing his crap here, then something must really be going on, because this is abnormal and rare. So let me pay attention and understand the gravity of it, versus if somebody is doing it all the time, win or lose, small margin to big margins, then it loses its effect. So I think that I benefited from that in that regard. But as far as getting there, it took a little bit, right? And that's just my demeanor of not wanting to get on guys unless it was, really necessary. But when it wasn't difficult, because I knew, like, the emotions just get through and you get hot, and that's where the competitiveness comes in.
I just have this vision of you when you've dialed it up and you're steamed between the ears, and I just have this vision of you trying to sit there and cuss and sit there and make your point and stomp around. I mean, did you ever have one of those almost out of body experiences where you're trying to sit there and make a point so atypically of how you would normally make a point that everybody was like, man, Parkhurst is out there today? Did you ever have one of those out of body experiences where you had to make a point?
Yeah, I mean, I remember one specifically. I was in Denmark at the time, and we had just played Champions League game against Shakhtar Donetsk, and it's a good history lesson and something crazy to look up on YouTube. Shakhtar Donetsk scored a crazy goal that we kicked the ball out of bounds on purpose for one of their guys. They were supposed to kick the ball back to us. Their guy kicked the ball back to our goalie, and their striker ran onto it and scored while all of us were stopped. Right. So it was like there was a huge delay in the game, like fighting. It was just insane. So anyways, and this is a group league Champions League game, like big time. So anyways, that guy ended up, Adriano, very good player, ended up scoring a hat trick in the game. And that was the first of the goals that he scored. And so we allowed him to score 2 more goals. And I lost it. I was playing right back at the time, and I lost it in the locker room afterwards, like in front of the whole team, like just saying how embarrassing and disgraceful it was. And, that this guy should have never been able to finish the game. Somebody needed to lay into him and make a point. And, that was just very rare for me, but I just could not control it. It was just, I had so much anger and so much fire inside. I remember that to this day for sure.
Do your mentees of this generation, how are they wired emotionally? Are they more hot tempered? Is it the three bears? Is it some are hot tempered, some are just right, and some are cold tempered? How do you view today's mentee? How are they wired more than not?
Yeah, all over the shop. There's definitely some that are too wired, and you need to let them understand about the losses and controlling things. But there are a fair share where I think that we've got sort of sometimes a tendency, especially for young youth players, to say, hey, like calm down out there. But sometimes that's their strength, is bringing that emotion and that fire to the game, and that tenacity. And so I say, hey, play the game with emotions. Don't go over the edge. But if that's one of your strengths, then bring it. Right? Don't put that on the side if that's one of your strengths. So like everything, right? There's that fine balance that we always talk about. But there's definitely players that but you're also saying, hey, you need to care a little bit more about your own play and the team's play, and can you affect it, and can you talk to guys and the right way. So definitely all over the shop.
How much are you as a mentor and Greg learning about mentoring through your mentees? I mean, I imagine that when you started Beyond Goals, there was this, you had a skill set, you had a mindset, you and Greg had an approach and an idea. How much have you learned about yourself as a mentor during this process with Beyond Goals?
Yeah, a lot, actually. I've learned, a lot about things that I just took for granted throughout my career, just because I didn't know any better. And it was just like, well, this is kind of how I am and why I do things and how I approach things. But now when I'm like trying to teach some of the things, I think back into like, oh, why did I do that? Or how did I do that? And why did it benefit me? And, oh, this is maybe why I instinctively did this or that. And no, not every player feels this way or does this thing or understands this concept or those types of things. So it really has me analyzing my own self and why I did some of the things I did and what led to success and what didn't, and those types of things where, I probably wouldn't have thought about all those things and what made me successful unless I was doing what I'm doing.
Abby with a question. She wonders what the mentee expectations are, even between generations, Gen Z compared with millennials. Are mentee expectations different, or are the expectations, regardless of which generation we're talking about, is it universal or are they different?
I think expectations are higher right now for, I don't know if it's for everyone, but definitely for like the Atlanta United players and like the higher the higher end athletes right now that we work with, like the even the club soccer players, right? They all want to become professional or play in college, and they've got these goals. And some of these kids want to turn pro by the time they're 16, 17, because some other players have. And so it's kind of managing those expectations a little bit as well. Also managing parents' expectations of their kids, and the pressure that puts on some kids. So definitely part of it is dealing with that and setting goals along the way, right? When I was going through, it was, my goal was, to make the high school team. And then it was, to become a starter and to see if I get to college. Okay, I can get to college. How good of a college can I get to? Okay, can I become a starter at college? And then it was just like, okay, eventually it was like, okay, I think I can turn pro. Not like, of course you have the dream of going pro, but the dream is different than the expectation. So yeah, for sure. We encourage kids and people to dream big. One thing that I heard not too long ago that I liked was, if nobody calls your dream crazy, you're not dreaming high enough or big enough.
Yeah.
And I really liked that. But, expectations is a different thing.
What was the last craziest dream you had?
The last craziest dream I had, I don't know. That's a good question. John. I don't know.
Was it Rhode Island?
That's yeah, it's a tough thing right now because a lot of the dreams are like, I hope to become reality. Like, yes, Rhode Island's a big one. I told my wife I want to be fluent in Spanish by the time I'm 40.
Okay.
So, maybe both of those are dreams, but some of it I have control over. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I will once again let you know. It's story time with John, real quick, to talk about crazy dreams. You know how, like, when your grandparents will sit there and they'll tell you that you're crazy sometimes, and they'll do this, they'll do the hand bit, and he's like, you're crazy. Well, when I was in college, my grandfather, who was Battle of Britain, invasion of North Africa, OSS, the wind tunnels in Tennessee in the 1950s, youngest ever at the time to achieve the rank of bird colonel. And because he never held his tongue, he remained the youngest ever at the time to remain bird colonel. When I told him, he's like, okay, so you're going to school. Well, what are you going to major in? I said, political science. He goes, oh, you're going to be a lawyer. I'm like, no, I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm going to work in television. I'm going to do TV sports. Instead of doing this, where he says, oh, you're crazy as hell. He came all the way from back here. It was like, oh, you're crazy as hell. And I mean, literally almost like threw his shoulder out of his socket. So that's the kind of crazy dream that you're looking at with this. And so I said, okay, that's a crazy enough dream to sit there and have your grandfather throw his arm out of the socket to tell you how nuts you were. Yeah, I mean, so that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at here. And to be able to have these things that are attainable and achievable. If what is it? If you don't dream it, you can't achieve it. I think that's
yep.
the case.
Yeah.
And so you've gone from incredibly successful professional athlete to now someone who is investing in futures, whether it's menteeing or if it's in expanding the game in a riverfront development with a shiny stadium and professional franchisee kind of stuff. I think that's dreaming pretty big and seeing things that you want to tackle, whether it's crazy or not. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, true. No, absolutely. No, I'll take those dreams if they both come realities here in the next year and a half or so. I'm doing all right. I'll be happy with that.
Okay.
I will say, John, just to everybody that's here, I am reading the messages on the side. I've realized now where they are, and the last couple of times I've been on, I've been seeing them. So yeah, I'm disappointed that Larry's not with Atlanta as well, but I am happy to have him up here in Ohio with me in Darlington.
Okay, yeah. So does this mean that that you're going to call up Big Red one morning and have him just kind of appear from the side, and just have him kind of eavesdrop in on the segment?
I'd love to have that.
Just have him knock on the door and crash the segment. I think that'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, Jeff actually was going to be a part of Beyond Goals. It was the three of us that were putting this all together, but then he had just too many commitments elsewhere, and wasn't quite sure at the time where he wanted to go and what he was going to do. So, but it was going to be the three of us, and before it was Greg and I.
Can't take him anywhere. Just man. Can you tackle an Atlanta United question before we go?
Of course.
All right. So Jason Nix came in this morning, and he wanted to know what your impression was of how Atlanta United has done business, and would you want to come here now if you had the choice?
If I was a player?
Yeah.
Yes. I'd be wary.
Mm-hmm.
More wary than I would have been a little while ago.
Yeah.
But yes, because it's still one of the biggest clubs in MLS. You still play in front of a massive crowd. It's still a well-funded team that takes good care of them, that has a great training facility, and will set you up for success. And if you do really well and you've got offers from, Europe or wherever, they obviously will sell if the offer is right. So I think all of those things still work in Atlanta United's favor. But there are other teams that are catching quickly. Atlanta United set the tone for MLS 3.0, 4.0, whatever you want to call it. But other teams have joined in, which is great. And that's what you wanted from the league. But it's still a top 5 destination in MLS.
So what's going on with Beyond Goals these days?
I'm down next week to speak to a foundation board so that we can hopefully get some 501(c), C3, whatever it is, funding for the nonprofit side. So hopefully that will go well, and it'll open up more doors for us to do more in the community.
Sweet. At MF Parkhurst on the Twitters. Now he's got a 3-week streak going, hanging out with me and all of my random questions and thoughts. And he's sitting there going, God, what's Nelson going to ask me next? I have no idea. And but thanks for hanging on to the comment every single week, Cap. It's great to have you on, and great work that you and Greg and everybody's doing there at Beyond Goals. And we will catch up with you next week, or we'll catch up with you the next time we see you. Whether or not Garza sits there and says, "Hey, can you cover for me again?"
This guy's always busy on Friday mornings. I don't know what's got going on,
dude. It's like, so yeah, we'll catch up with you and Garza. Thanks again, Mike.
Yeah, of course. Good to talk to you.
Have a good weekend. All right, be good. Michael Parkhurst, as always, fantastic for him to catch up with us here at Beyond Goals. So let me do this, since I didn't get to do it when he first was here.